Hello and welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Stephanie Rivers. Come on into the conversation. We are multicasting on several platforms, so you could be watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. On whatever platform you're watching, we want to welcome you to the conversation. So, what are we talking about today? When you hear this term, this is your captain speaking on an airline flight in the United States. More than 90% of the time, the speaker is a white man. Just 3.4% of US airline pilots are Black. 2.2% of airline pilots are Asian, and a small 0.5% are Hispanic or Latino. Women make up just 4.6% of all airline pilots. Now, off those numbers alone, statistics will say that the majority of the mistakes that happen in the flight deck are made by one of the 90%, the white men. But surprise, surprise, that's not what some people would have you to believe. So, in case you're under the false impression that airline companies are allowing unqualified Black and brown people to fly airplanes just to fill a DEI mandate, you would be wrong. Now, they have pilots, they have to have a certain amount of flight hours of training. They have to do simulator training. They have to spend time as a co-pilot or an understudy, if you will. They have to get check rides. They have to have experience landing in different areas of the country, not to mention all the other requirements. Except today, we are going to mention the other requirements. And that's why we have our guests on today who are better qualified to talk to you about it. So let's welcome to the show Tennessee Garvey. He is the board of directors, chairman of OBAP. That's the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And he's also an airline pilot for a major U.S. airline. We also have with us today Claudia Zapata Cardoni. She's president of the Latino Pilots Association, and she's also a pilot, a captain with a major airline. So let's welcome them to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So before we get into it, the conversation that we want, before we get into the conversation, I want to acknowledge the passing of David E. Harris. He was the first Black pilot for a major airline in the United States, and he died a few days ago. He was 80, in his 80s, actually. So we want to acknowledge his passing. And let's get into it now. Some people push the belief that Black and Latino pilots are inferior to white pilots. When you don't challenge the lie that people keep spewing, pretty soon others start to believe that stereotype. Now, someone sent me a few videos a couple of days ago that I want for us to comment on. So let me play that first video for you.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off. And I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
And that's why.
So let's jump into it now. Who wants to comment on that first? Let me take that out. Which one of you wants to comment first on that?
Sure, I could go for it. When I first saw that clip, Stephanie, it just leaves my mind blank, and my mouth just totally ajar. When it comes to diversity doesn't mean you're lowering the standards, you're lowering the bar. When it comes down to being qualified and to pursue a career within this industry, there's a reason. There's multiple reasons why the numbers that you showed earlier are as low as they are. For one, there's numerous barriers to entry, but for those that have made it into this industry, I can attest that the training to get there and just the ongoing training, not just the initial training, but the ongoing training beyond that, it's very rigorous. The airlines don't get to dictate standard. That's the FAA. The FAA not only promotes aviation, but they also regulate the industry. And, they can set requirements in terms of what the qualifications are, whether you're a private pilot, instrument pilot, or a commercial airline pilot. Once you get to a commercial airline pilot, there's nothing, it amazes me that somebody would actually come out and actually say, when you see a black pilot, um, you know, it's a threat to aviation safety. If anything, it's anything but a threat. Diversity, as we've seen across corporate America, is a really good thing. Diversity, it creates more ideas. It's a good thing, when an airline makes an effort to have, a work group that reflects the industry and the markets and regions that it serves. So, what I will say is, when you see a black pilot, yes, we're only maybe 3 out of every 100 pilots, but I can guarantee you to get into that seat, that pilot went through a tremendous amount of training and even ongoing training to basically stay in that seat. So when you see a black pilot, you should be reassured you have somebody who's very qualified in that seat.
Any comments from you?
I'm with Tennessee on on everything he said. When that video first came to me, of course, it came via text by people that were very upset within my own organization. And the reason I say that, you look at me and I'm a woman, I'm Latina, and you would think like, well, why are you getting upset? And if we're an ally to all, or we're an ally to none, and we know that it will come to us next. They're gonna, they're not just questioning black pilots, they're going to be questioning female pilots, they're going to be questioning Latinos, Asians, they're going to be questioning everyone that isn't a white male. And so, reiterating what Tennessee said, there are so many studies out there. Gartner, the World Economic Forum, Harvard Business Review. I mean, there's so many studies out there that reiterate the fact that diverse organizations have better outcomes, have more innovation. Economic prosperity grows within that organization by having these diverse groups. And for us, it enhances safety, diverse perspectives, because we're going to, instead of listening to the perspective of one group, we're listening to the perspective of several groups, and that enhances safety. And as Tennessee mentioned, the training that we go through is relentless and rigorous. There are no shortcuts. We are not given a pass because I'm a female and I'm Latina, or Tennessee is black and a male, or someone else is Asian, or the LGBTQ community either. I mean, we have the standards are the standards. There are no shortcuts. It is rigorous. It is relentless. We go through so many certificates and ratings to get to where we are. And I think the general public doesn't realize that. It's not just one day I became a commercial pilot. We have to start off with our private pilot certificate. After that, we earn a instrument rating so that we can fly in unfavorable weather conditions. After that, we get a commercial certificate. But that doesn't mean that we immediately get hired by an airline at that point. We actually have to build more time. From there, we may get we have to get our multi-engine certificate attached to that, or multi-engine rating, my multi-engine rating attached to that. After that, then you can maybe begin to think about flying, but we're not flying, again, a commercial airline. We're building our time. We're now having to get our certificate, our certified flight instructor certificate, our certified flight instructor instrument certificate, our multi-engine instructor rating. There are so many ratings and certificates that we have to get. And we have to build that time, and it has to be quality time. We have to instruct other people. Other people may, do offshore flying, as far as, I'm sorry, not offshore, oil, like the oil lines, that's one of them. There's so many different ways to start building the time. And you have to get to 1,500 hours and get something called an airline transport certificate. So it's not just one day I got my commercial certificate and now I'm an airline pilot. We go through years of training, getting all these certificates and ratings to be able to sit in that seat that we have earned.
And so, and you spoke to, you both did, on the types of qualifications and the training that you go through, because a lot of people might think, it's just like you sit down at a computer, pass a test, now you're a pilot. Although I don't know why they would think it's that simple, because there are a lot of people, no matter what race or gender, who can't do all that. So the fact that you have gotten the hours and the training, and you now are in where you are today, speaks to your time in and your skill level. And so, yeah, and I'm a flight attendant for a major airline, and so I too know of the responsibilities that goes along with, and the accountability that goes along with being an airline pilot or a crew member, for that matter. So, what reaction do you get when a passenger or passengers see you walk into the flight deck? Do you see some of these? Is it a surprise? Is it happy surprise, or excited? Wow, she's a woman, he's a black man. Or do you feel as if people have some type of anxiety in general, or you don't even worry about that?
So so I'll take that one. So I will say the surprise, Stephanie, I've seen the full spectrum. For the most part, I will say, again, there's not many pilots that look like myself. Especially start talking about female pilots. Now we're talking about almost 1% or less than 1%. So, anytime I go to work, I try to be very visible. I'm very passionate about my career and I enjoy interacting with the customers. And there'll be times I'll be walking through the terminal, and it's almost like every month there's just a reaction. But for the most part, I'll be walking through the terminal. The most recent flight I did, I had an older lady, saw me walking towards the gate, and she ran up to me, asked if I was a pilot for the flight. I said yes, and literally in the gate area, she started to cry because she's just never seen someone that looked like myself be a pilot for an airline. For her, it was very emotional. It started getting me emotional. And then, we've had instances where, every once in a blue moon, and it's so rare, but, there'll be two of us that are black flying the aircraft. And, as you're walking through the terminal, you could just feel the heads turning, because, not turning in terms of, wow, it's safe. It's just, you can see people are proud, and but it's also very surprising as well. The last trip that I did, in fact, it was actually early this year. So early this year, back in January, I did a flight to Hawaii, and it was myself and a female pilot who was blonde. And again, seeing a black first officer and a white female pilot, again, it just turns a lot of heads. And, for me, that just tells me we have a lot of work to do, because, in 2024, it shouldn't be shock and awe that you have diverse pilots that are also very qualified flying the aircraft. So, that's why we have organizations like the Latina Pilots Association and Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, where we're doing more to increase our numbers in this space. Very rare do I have someone, actually ask if I'm qualified. In fact, you can see it on the faces at times, and I feel like it's just depending on where you are. Some cities are less diverse than others. So, when you see a black pilot, or some countries, they're not as open to, diversity as other countries. So it just depends where you are, Stephanie. But it's very rare. But for the most part, I feel people embrace the diversity. But to a lesser degree, you have the one or two instances where I've never been confronted. I've heard the stories, but you know, you can tell by the looks that they're almost scrutinizing the uniform. But again, for the most part, people are very embracing of the diversity in the flight deck.
That's been my experience as well. I've only had, and I'll have to tell this story. I've only had it one time where someone actually got off the aircraft, and this is when I was at a regional carrier, and we were flying from Atlanta to Augusta, and it was for the golf tournament, obviously, and it was myself. I was the first officer, and my captain was a female, and there was a male that was very uncomfortable and demanded that the company get a male pilot.
Really?
Yes, this happened in 2013. And we said no. And he got off. And then I think the best part was that we were the last flight of the evening going to Augusta. There were no rental cars because people were flying from Atlanta and driving over to Augusta. And I don't think he got on even the next day because the flights were full. And that's the only, and there was one other time, and this was in the South, and I'm not painting a broad brush of the South, but it just happened that the airline that I worked for was heavily concentrated in the Southeast, and it was for a regional carrier again. And I had landed, and I was saying goodbye to the passengers, and a little old lady came up and asked me if I landed the airplane, and I said, yes, ma'am, I did. And she's like, if I'd have known that, I would have never gotten on the airplane. And she stormed off. And I just remember thinking how sad for you that you don't have an open mind for women being in the flight deck. And those are my two instances. But every other time, when I have been walking through the terminal, as Tennessee said, you can see the heads turning. And it's been mostly a positive experience. Yeah, you can see occasionally, you see the look on some people's face, and you can tell by the look that they're not too happy. But, I go in and do the best job that I can and prove them wrong of whatever preconceived notions that they have. Recently, it's funny, I flew with another female, and it is so rare for us to have an all-female crew where it's two females on the flight deck, and then our flight attendants were all females. Usually there's always a male in there. And I was so lucky that during this 4-day trip, it was an all-female crew every time. And every time I made the announcement, I always made a point of saying, how rare it is. And I had a very, very sweet elderly Black woman come up, and she was so excited. And she was in her 90s, and she had never seen two female pilots. And a little part of me was sad that I thought, oh, these wonderful female pilots that I know that are Black, I wish they were with me, or I wish they had been my first officer, or I had been a first officer and they were a captain, so she could see. And what I did was I pulled out my phone, and I showed her the pictures of my Black female friends that are pilots. And she told me, I had a dream of wanting to be a pilot, but I was told I couldn't because I was a woman. And I suspect because she was Black as well. And I told her, they're standing on your shoulders of your dreams. And I want you to know that they're out there, and we're growing, and we're not going to stop. And people just seem to think that diversity and inclusion are just, these terms that get thrown out, and that we're lowering standards and we're filling a quota. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And representation matters. Representation matters in every industry, but especially in the aviation sector that has typically just had one demographic representing them.
So, Captain, you once said, I think I read it in your bio, that you too felt like at some point that being an airline pilot wasn't in your future. And here you are, a captain. So what changed for you? And, what experience do you have in the flight deck with mostly males who fly with you?
Yeah. So my story goes back to my dad. And forgive me if I get a little emotional. My dad was such a huge supporter of my path, and I lost him 18 months ago. So he was hired. We were living in New Jersey, Elizabeth, New Jersey. And my dad had worked at the Singer Corporation. He'd been laid off, and he was working as a van driver for the Howard Johnsons and another motel that was near the Newark airport. And his path happened to cross a gentleman that worked for a company called Certified Freight Services. They did load planning for, I believe at the time it was Braniff and People Express. It was just this company that worked with the airlines. And he when the gentleman found out that my dad had a lot of experience import export with Singer, he told him to apply to this company. This company eventually got merged in with People Express, and eventually got merged in with Continental Airlines. And we were a family of minimal means, and so my dad worked 2 jobs for a very long time, because when I've told this story, people have pushed back and said, well, your dad could have made dinner. And it's like, well, my dad was driving a van usually from about 9 to 2:30, and then he would go to work and work from like 3 to midnight. So when my mom would get home, she'd make him dinner, and we'd go, and I got to watch the airplanes take off and land at the Newark airport. And so years later, I became something called a crew scheduler for AirTran Airways. This was in the mid-90s, and a couple pilots took me up flying, and they basically just told me like, oh yeah, the most you could ever do is, do puddle jumpers. Yeah, there's my dad and my mom. They can do puddle jumpers and basically just kind of fly within Florida and the islands. And, part of the reason I didn't think it was for me was because the airline that I worked for, it was all, male pilots. And I didn't think it was a possibility. And then I became a flight attendant for another major carrier. And it took a couple years, but I finally started meeting some female pilots, and they were in the military. And so they could only give me minimal information, and they didn't really know how the general aviation. So I knew general aviation existed. I just didn't know the path. And it wasn't until I finally met a female pilot that had gone through the general aviation route and sat down with me and said, this is how you do it. You go from here to here to here to here. And what solidified it was, at the time, this was pre 9/11, our company had where you could sit up in the flight deck and watch the takeoff and landing to see what the pilots were going through. Because of course, and as you being a flight attendant, Steffanie, the pilot workload, super high from the moment we push back to the gate until we get to cruise. And then it gets really busy for us on the descent and landing. And then for the flight attendants, it's different. You're sitting there, you're not doing anything until cruise, and then you're busy. And so I went in there, and there was a female, and it was on an L-1011. It was a female pilot. And we had to do a go around out of Atlanta. And the command she had, it was the command and the respect the other 2 pilots had for her that really blew me away. And I told her, I'm thinking of doing this. I think I want to be a pilot. And she, very tall woman, I remember this. She was 5'11" or 6 feet tall, and she had like 3-inch heels on top of that. She was towering. And I said, but I don't know. You can't tell because I'm sitting down, but I'm 5 feet tall. I said, I just don't know if I can do it because I'm so small. And she was like, that doesn't matter. Like, you go out there and you do this, and you're going to do this, and this is how you're going to do it. And she was just so passionate about it that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. I think I can do this. I'm doing it. And I did. And so again, representation matters. It wasn't until I saw females doing it and being treated with that respect that I realized, like, I can do this as well. And it was life-changing. And then Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals was life-changing for me as well, because I started volunteering with them. And every setback, every unconscious bias that I faced while going through training, they validated me and said, yes, it's happening. This is what you do to get through it. And so I am forever indebted to the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals for that, because at the time we didn't have a Latino Pilots Association. Our association didn't start until 2015. And so I'm talking back 2000, 2001, 2002, and they welcomed me with open arms and supported me, for so many years. So, again, even though I did have females mentoring me, I didn't have that, that extra support that we needed. And that's why our organizations are so vital to exposing young people and breaking down financial barriers as much as we can to really start diversifying, our flight decks and the aviation industry.
So, are you the first president of LPA?
No, I'm the third.
Third.
So
Okay.
LPA was founded in 2015 by 5 friends, and they started the LPA. So I'm actually the third president.
Okay. So I do want to talk about the programs that each of the uh, uh, organizations have to work with youth to get them interested in aviation. But before we go there, First Officer, I know you. There's a saying in the Black community that you have to be twice as good as your white counterpart to get the position that both of you are qualified for. At least that was what was said in my family. So what has been your experience with that in your pursuit of becoming and being an airline pilot?
Thank you, Stephanie. I will say that is very much true. From my experience, you absolutely have to work twice as hard. Like I mentioned earlier, you have that stigma that you're working against, the stigma that, you don't belong, that you're there just filling a quota, and you're unsafe. And I will say, from my experience going through, I grew up in Jamaica. I grew up with very, very humble beginnings, and like Claudia, I was very fortunate to have family and my parents that supported me and supported the dream. So after high school, I came to the United States, went to university where I got my degree, got my wings. And, the unfortunate part for me was I enrolled in university in August 2001. The very next month was 9/11. So, first of all, that had a immediate effect where because I was a foreign student seeking flight training within the United States, I was no longer eligible to pursue flight training. I had to change my degree program to something that didn't require flight for degree completion until the U.S. government came with a process to vet international students. So, as an international student, I eventually had the opportunity to where I could, once they created a TSA and the flight school candidates.gov website or the alien flight student program where they can actually vet international students, I wasn't allowed to pursue flight training. But once that, came to fruition, I was able to re-enroll back into my degree program and, basically start my flight training. And I can tell you from the very beginning, the fact that for one, I'm an international student, and then separately, the fact that I'm a Black pilot pursuing, aviation, there's always that constant stigma. I had a colleague of mine that we were both enrolled in flight school. He and his instructor got into an argument in the aircraft. I mean, as flight instructors, and I still flight instruct, the airplane is a really bad place to teach. And it's especially the worst airplane to have a breakdown where you have a student and an instructor arguing. And his instructor said something that stuck with me over the years, Stephanie. His instructor, I didn't remember what the argument was about, but his instructor essentially told him, I'm not afraid of Black people in the flight deck. And, that instructor, there's repercussions who later got terminated. But that is the stigma that we're working against, the stigma that we don't belong. And I feel that, for me in my journey, no matter where it was in my journey, I had to make sure that I was always the best of the best. Like I was always, being in the top. So that way, when it came to me belonging, when it came to my qualifications, that it could never be questioned. This basically pursued even beyond university. For me, my path, I got my degree, I got my wings, later became a flight instructor, and eventually worked my way to becoming the assistant chief flight instructor for the university. Again, it's just this pursuit for excellence, and I can tell you with an OBAP, you're going to see the hashtag OBAP excellence. That is ingrained in our DNA. The fact that anyone who wants to pursue a career within aviation aerospace, you have to work hard because there's going to be those on the sideline that's going to be questioning whether do you belong. They're going to be questioning your qualifications, and through your work you can counter all of that. I just see that as noise in the room. um, when it came time for me to transition from basically flight training or academia into the airline industry, what I found, and it's, I call it an unconscious bias, but my experience, and it's not always been the case, but there have been instances where, going through initial training or going through recurrent training, You can feel, again, earlier we call it the look in the airport that we sometimes get. I can tell you in the flight training department, and this is more so in my early career. You can feel the stigma. I mean, you were talking about being in an industry that's very white male dominated, but at the same time, for me, going through whether it's initial training or recurrent training, my thing is I'll always study incredibly hard. So when I show up, not only do I know the material, I know the procedures, the proof, like I'm showing up fully prepared. And, whatever unconscious bias there may be or may not be, but in the rare instances where there is some unconscious bias, the fact that I'm performing and performing excellently, again, I'm allowing my works to basically speak for itself. So, as being a part of OBAP, when it comes down to a lot of what we do is mentorships. When it comes down to young adults that want to get into this field, we do mentor and we do encourage them that no matter what you do it to the best of your ability. When it comes down to being able to afford it, when it comes down to getting access to resources, that's what OBAP is for. But the one thing that we ask is you have to be 100% committed, and you have to have the right mindset, the right aptitude, because this industry, there's going to be a lot of challenges along the way, and challenges come in various forms. But there's always that overlying stigma that, you're here just for a number. And, the only way to break through that stigma is just by being excellent. So we really encourage individuals to just be excellent. And so again, working twice as hard, yes, it does exist because if you show up half prepared, you're only going to be feeding into a narrative that we know is not true.
I agree. And, when it comes to safety, it's not just a flight deck issue. Safety is a responsibility of each work group at an airline. And I don't know how much you can speak on this, but I did want to at least bring it up. When you look at the recent airline door that blew off of the plane as it was ascending. That turned out to be, at least what I've read, that the door that blew off, someone during a maintenance issue took the bolts out of the door and for whatever reason did not put them back. That aircraft flew a couple of flights before that happened. When you look at some of the things that we have learned about that happen in the flight deck, pilots maybe falling asleep, pilots landing at the wrong airport, these types of things, that just shows that now when those things happen, in my opinion, if it was a Black or brown person who was at fault for that, we would know it because they would parade them around. They would say, this is the person. And because some people want to feed into a stereotype. So the fact that we know that some of these, we've not been shown pictures of certain people, and they, fired certain people for it, lets me know that these are not these particular stereotype that they want to put out there because it was a white person, just in my opinion. So can you speak on that? There are some issues that occur that are are just as important. Maintenance is important. You might think of them as just aircraft maintenance, but that they hold the lives of all the people in their hands based on how well they do their jobs. So it's important. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. All of the,
Absolutely.
yeah. And as a former flight attendant, and you're a former flight attendant, we all contribute to the safety culture of all of our airlines that we work for, our respective airlines that we work for. And it's so important. And, I tell my flight attendants, you're my eyes and ears in the back of the cabin. And because I think people want to think that we're machines and that we, operate in this vacuum, and we don't. We, I'm sure Tennessee will agree with me that we, something called crew resource management. We use that effectively on every single flight. Every single flight, we use crew resource management, and that's getting all the information from all available parties to make the best decision that you can if something comes up. But it's also ongoing, making sure that everything is going well in the flight, calling back, making sure that, there's no issues in the back of the aircraft. And we do rely on our maintenance partners. And I feel like every single airline has a very rigorous safety program and training program for maintenance, for flight attendants, for our gate agents, for our ramp agents, and then especially for our pilots. So, we all have to work together to ensure the safety of each and every flight.
So, talk to me about some of the programs that you have in place. I know you mentioned it, First Officer. If someone is interested in being a pilot, as a matter of fact, I'll put this out there. I'm a drone pilot, so I have my drone pilot's license.
Congrats.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Because of, the amount of time and money that it takes, and unless you start, in the military, some people get those flight hours in the military. I wasn't in the military, but I thought I want to be a pilot. So I'm just going to start with a baby pilot, a pilot license, and get my drone pilot's license. So if someone wants to get into they want to be a pilot, they want to get into aviation, what programs do you know of where they could, if it's a summer training program for youth, or if they want to get into it as a career, what do you suggest? How do they get started, each of you?
Sure. So with OBAP, OBAP or Ethos, it's dreams to careers. So we're all about, if you're interested in pursuing a career within aviation or within aerospace, just get connected with us. I would say, don't try to do it on your own. Aviation is just one of those careers where, yes, you can try to figure it out on your own, but gosh, there's so many resources out there. And when it comes down to the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, one of the things that we try to do is, we try to inspire, from a very young age, the opportunities that are within aviation and aerospace. And we do this through one of our programs that we call APIS, Aerospace Professionals in Schools. So if you want to learn, if we've never been to your school or if you've never had any experience with OBAP, I would say seek us out. I always tell everyone the first thing is try to get a discovery flight. I mean, if you're thinking of becoming a pilot, there's no greater way to take a first step and to know if this really is for you than to do a discovery flight. And if you take your discovery flight and you can do this at a local airport, my first discovery flight, I panicked. Like, I literally, no kidding, ever since I was 6, I knew I wanted to be a pilot. But I took a discovery flight, panicked. My mom encouraged me to, just do it one more time just to see if, because you've always wanted to fly. I did it, and that was it. Once you go beyond the discovery flight, one cool thing about OBAP is we start offering programs for individuals at a very young age. So whether you're in middle or high school, during the fall and spring semesters, we have a program called Explore Aerospace. And through that program, you can start to learn about aviation. Stephanie's talked about, she has her drone pilot license. We actually offer a virtual course as a part of our Explore Aerospace program. So every semester, we alternate the topic. So one semester could be on unmanned aerial systems, the next one could be on aviation, and then it goes to aircraft maintenance. So the EA program is a really great way to, while you're still in school in the fall and spring, to learn about aviation. During the summer, OBAP partners with the FAA and with industry groups where we offer the largest footprint of what we call ACE Academies, Aerospace Career Education Academies. And these are really cool programs. During the summer, over the course of a week, you will actually get to do air traffic control tower tours. You get to tour basically different airline facilities. You get to tour aerospace companies. And no matter where you are, you also get to do what we call a discovery flight as well. So as a part of that program, it's really designed to be a very hands-on engagement. This coming summer, I'm very excited to say we're going to be doing 44 of them, which is a lot. To put into perspective, I believe every year the FAA offers just about 110 of these programs. And OBAP alone, we offer almost half of them. So from Hawaii across the United States, San Juan in Puerto Rico, and also in the U.S. Virgin Islands, OBAP has an ACE Academy. So this coming summer, if you're not sure your summer plans are and you're thinking of getting involved with aviation, our ACE Academies is a really great way to get involved. Again, I see these programs as planting the seeds. Now, what about where, gosh, I really want to do this, like I really want to pursue it? OBAP, we have a presence in universities and college campuses across the United States. So we have these collegiate chapters. And the whole intent of these chapters is, again, to support you along your journey. Mentorship is really ingrained in OBAP's DNA. So no matter where you are, you could be a middle school student just getting involved with ACE Academy. We will try to get you connected with a mentor. The mentors could be ACE director, it could be a member of the organization, or it could just be someone within the organization getting you connected with somebody who they know can help you with your journey. So we really try to mentor, all the way through. So when it comes down to the collegiate program, we're there. OBAP also offer what's called a Solo Flight Academy. So if you've gone through whether the Explorers, which is a virtual program, or Summer ACE Academy, and now you're of age where you can actually fly an airplane, which is at 16 by yourself. OBEP has a program where this summer, I'm actually very excited to say, through industry support, we actually going to be offering this program for free. So once you sign up for the program and you've been accepted into the program, over the course of 2 weeks, you're going to go from basically no experience or from maybe just having done a discovery flight to where you're actually going to be trained to operate an airplane by yourself and go take off and fly. So OBAP really try to be intentional when it comes down to end to end. So we talk about the collegiate program. OBAP offers a lot of scholarships. Claudia talked about earlier, as a part of her journey, she started from very humble beginnings. And, one of the biggest barriers to entry in this, in this career, whether you want to be a pilot or aerospace engineer, is just cost. I'll tell you, my background, I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It was a very expensive university. But, through scholarships, through grants, and this is what we're trying to do through OBAP, we're trying to make those barriers lower. One of our members talked about, there's so much talent across, diverse communities, whether it's a Black community or, a Latina community, Hispanic communities, like there's a lot of talent there. Through organizations like LPA and through OBAP, we try to bring opportunities closer to where the talents are. So, by providing scholarships, providing programs, for those that have that interest, just because you're born in, an impoverished, or, you're living in a community where you just don't have the financial means, that's okay. As long as you have the ambition and the right attitude and aptitude, we're going to get you connected with the resources within OBAP. So, beyond the Solo Flight Academy, beyond the collegiate program, OBAP has what we call the APDP, which is Aerospace Professional Development Program. So when it comes down to collegiate graduates or early career, again, OBAP is there to help mentor you. We're going to provide content, we're going to provide resources, we're going to get you connected with industry. So when you get to where you want to start applying for your dream job, OBAP is going to be there to help you, get to where you want to go. So back when you were in middle school, fast forward to now where you're applying for your very first, whether it's your aerospace job or your first airline job, OBAP, again, we really try to make your dream become a career through our programs.
And that's exciting that you can go from in a few weeks, to from not having the experience to having a few flight hours under your belt. So there are, if they want to find out more, their OBAP has a Facebook page, and of course their OBAP.org website.
Yes, so we're all over social media, so Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or just visit the website. Or you can just email info@obap.org. Do you want to get connected? And we'll get you connected. But the best way is just either through our social media or just visit our website and just reach out to us. But just sign up. We have so many programs year round. I would just say just sign up. And we also have our annual conference this coming August. Industry comes out, and in one room you'll see the entire gamut of aviation aerospace industry. So even just attending our conference in August is a great way to learn more and just to start your networking.
And so, Captain Claudia, what organization or what programs does the LPA have? And are you a mentor? If
Oh, yes.
someone wants to be mentored by you, how can they reach you?
So, LPA started in 2015, like I said, with 5 friends, and it was very much concentrated in the Florida area. So we did a lot of school visits there. We're just slowly starting to expand now. So we don't have as many programs as OBAP. And like I said, and I'm proud that I was part of those camps, and that's how I volunteered. As a flight attendant and then as a flight instructor for the OBAP ACE camps and the OBAP Solo Flight Academy back in the 2000s. So it's just, the LPA is trying to model our stuff after OBAP because they were so successful at it. So right now we had a very successful expo in September. It was a one-day expo in Orlando, Florida. We're going to have another one this year in September, and we encourage people that please come to the expo as well to start connecting with people. We also started up a mentorship program. We've just got that up and running recently in the last few weeks. And right now we had about 100 people sign up, and we encourage more people, please join LPA. And if you're looking for a mentor, sign up for that because we're starting to match mentors with mentees. One of the things we've been working on for the last couple of years, we're going to finally have our first camp, and it's called ALAS. And ALAS is Spanish for wings. And it stands for the Academy for Latinos in Aviation Sciences. And it's going to be very similar to what OBAP ACE Camp is where we're going to take high school students and we're going to take them through a week of air traffic control, through the airports, through maintenance. And this is going to be in New York. Our first one is going to be in New York. And so that's what we're doing right now. And what we're hoping to do is and we're really sure that this is going to be successful, that we're going to spread this across the United States in heavily Latino, Hispanic communities so that we can get more children. And then from there, what we're hoping is with that success that we'll be able to then start tailoring also to the middle and elementary school children as well, so that they can start getting that bug for aviation. And so those are our programs. And then, of course, we have scholarship programs as well to break down those financial barriers. Last year, we ended up awarding almost over $1 million in scholarships, which was fantastic. And so this year, we're hoping to do the same. And a lot of these scholarships are going to be opening up in about the May-June timeframe. Again, these are scholarships that are, given to us by generous sponsors so that we can help break those financial barriers for people. Because as Tennessee said, one of the biggest barriers to entry into the aviation and aerospace sector is financial. The way I ended up doing my flight training, I ended up funding my flight training with the help of my parents. Once I realized this is something I wanted to do, I worked really hard for 2 years, working as much as I could, saving up as much money as I could. And then I went to a flight school. And unfortunately, after September 11th, that flight school went out of business and I only had my private and instrument. And I had given them all my money and I didn't get my money back. So I had to continue working as a flight attendant, working, over 100 hours a month. And I know people are like, oh, that's nothing. But as crew members, we know 100 to 150 hours a month, that's a lot of flying. That was minimum probably like 3 days off the month that I would have. And what I would do is I would work as many hours as I could, save up money, and then get my next rating. So it took me a long time to get all my ratings because of having that financial blow after September 11th and my flight school going out of business. So I try to tell people that was my journey, and I really want to prevent that for you. Because when you take time away from flight training like that, it becomes difficult because that muscle memory, it's still there. It's like playing a musical instrument. If you haven't played in a few years and you all of a sudden pick up, it's kind of there, but you have to, really work hard at it. And so every time I was always started a little bit behind and having to relearn, like, okay, this is what I have to do. So yeah, I would encourage people to please apply to our scholarships. Like I said, if you go on our LPA website, you'll see that, you'll see when they open, like I said, May and June. And I hope our organization is as big and successful as OBAP, because like I said, I look up to OBAP so much because they mean so much to me, because they truly helped me on my journey. And the biggest thing for us is our motto is inspire, mentor, and develop. And what that development part means is supporting them throughout their journey. And we talk about mentorship, but we don't talk about sponsorship enough, I think. Sponsorship is where you're in a room full of people and you mention that person's name as a candidate. And that is that sponsorship portion that we try to push as well, is putting those names out there and saying, these are the people you need to look at. They have what I think, to quote somebody else, they have the right stuff. We have the right stuff. It's not just one demographic that has the right stuff. We do as well. So that's really where we're at right now with our organization. Again, we're just coming up on our 9-year anniversary in August, and it's taken us a while, but we hope to be as big as OBAP and offering the same things to our communities and working together with OBAP on several other ventures, because it's not just us and keeping each individual group in a silo. It's really working together to benefit everybody and lift everybody.
Well, I appreciate you again coming on, and I will say that if there's anything, in addition to me being a drone pilot, I started a drone company, and we do a summer immersion program at organizations like boys and girls clubs. So if there's ever a chance where you're having an event and you would like someone to talk about drones and how that could lead to commercial piloting, be sure and remember TCB drones.
Yes.
We will be reaching out, Steffanie.
We'll be
I think that's
reaching out.
awesome.
You put it out there.
So again, if anyone sees this, and we will repost this on our social media platforms. So if anyone sees it and wants to be involved, be sure to reach out to the organization so you can be ready for the spring and summer events that are coming up. So thank you guys for taking out the time, if you're more in your morning, to come on and dispel the rumors, dispel the stereotypes about what's going on in the flight deck. And I will end with this. There was one time when I was deadheading. So there was a crew member that's not working, but sitting like a passenger, and something happened, maybe turbulence, maybe something like that. And one of the passengers, because I had on my uniform, and the passenger said, "Oh, do you ever get afraid of what's happening?" And I'm like, "No, because they're qualified in the flight deck. Just because there's turbulence or what have you, I don't get anxious, because I realize that whatever happens to us back here is going to happen to them. They want to live and get past this moment. So they're going to make sure they do whatever they can with their training, with their instincts, whatever they need to make sure we get past this. So I don't worry. And of course, when things happen, the passengers are looking into the flight attendant's eyes to see, how are you taking this? Because if you're okay with what's happening, then that makes me feel, the passenger saying, that makes me feel a little more easy. So, I remember that as well, and so I want to commend you again for your success in your careers and how you're helping to bring youth along and others along who want to be a part of your ranks. So I look forward to working with your individual organizations in the future, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Steffanie.
You.
All right. So you have a good day.
You too.
Okay, take care. Be well.
So that's it. We want to thank you as well for being a part of the conversation. And again, if you want to find out any more about how you can get into the aviation field, or you have a young person in your life that you want that has been, enamored with airplanes, or going into the flight deck when you fly on a flight, then reach out to OBAP, the Organization of Black Aeronautic Professionals and Latino Pilots Association, to find out more. Or you can just email me at info@steffanierivers.com. So to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thank you so much and have a super day.